Okay, let's start. Before Shashi start, and let me go over the schedule for 2 minutes. Okay. So this year last week we talked about Zhuangzi. Okay, and today we talk about Shashi is going to talk about Hinduism, the Seer and the Seen for today, and next week we're going to talk about the Han Feizi, the Chinese legalism. Sorry for change the schedule. It was scheduled on March 19th, and which I for the family emergency, I canceled it, and we postponed to the next week, April 9th. And then after that, the schedule I'm trying to do is continue on Feng Youlan's book for the Confucianism metaphysics, and then we move to the Han Dynasty, Dong Zhongshu. Okay, that's another philosopher kind of. At that time, we are out of the warring state, so China become a united one nation. So we will see the difference in philosophy, kind of like similar to the Roman Empire. That's my personal feeling. And then I start to work on the translation on Confucian's Analects. So I will try to present or lead the group to read the Analects chapter by chapter in order to we will try a book by book. Total have 19 books. So that's the temporary schedule for this year. And then if you have no questions, and that's give to Shashi, and then we will start for today's section. Yeah, Shashi, your turn.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you. Okay, so share. Let's see. You guys can see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is the window. Okay. Oh, 1 second. Sorry about that. All right. So hello, everybody. So we did last time we did the Katha Upanishad. You should remember. So you will see some similarities here. But what we are going to talk about here is considered as one of the intros, sort of an intro document into Advaita or non-dualism or Vedanta, right? So typically what they recommend in Vedanta is that, you know, whatever you're reading, first of all, you need to be able to read. Then you need to be able to repeat. So that is called as the Shravana. Then you want to intellectually understand it and internalize it. So that is the Manan. So you are sitting with the what you've read and understand. You still might have some doubts in your mind about it. But then the third step is the key step, right? You know, whatever you're reading, you want to see how it applies to your own life, how you can assimilate into your own lives, right? So that is the Nididyasa. So the first 2/3 of this section of this book is you know, focused on the Shravana and Manana, and then it talks about how you can make this into a living fact for you as you you know, try to understand this and assimilate this in your life. Now, so a lot of this analysis here is kind of like a pedagogy, right? Now, what it is it is trying to set up a methodology to ultimately lead us to what is non-duality or Advaita. Advaita is the Sanskrit word for non-duality. And the final goal is, you know, what they are trying to say is Brahman, or the consciousness that we feel, is one without any second. You know, that's all there is. And what is the purpose of this? Well, why do we want to understand that consciousness is the only thing, or Brahman is the only thing? It's to get freedom from suffering, suffering from life. So one of the, we can just read this from Ashtavakra Gita is another advanced text in Vedanta. So what he says is, I'm an infinite ocean of existence, consciousness and bliss. Universe. Now universe here means everything, our body, mind, and the outside world is one little boat floating on my surface. It moves up and down by its internal law of causation, right? So things go up and down: birth, death, creation of planets, life evolves, goes extinct, supernovae come and go, right? Galaxies disappearing. I am not impatient with it. I watch it. That is the seer, right? That is the final Brahman that he's talking about. And then he gives another example. Universe is just a wave in my ocean of consciousness. Let the wave rise and settle back in ocean. I, the ocean, is neither increased nor decreased by it. Sorry for the typos. Let birth come, death come, I lose nothing. Let success, defeat, despair come, I lose nothing. Let knowledge, disease come and go, I lose nothing. And then he goes even further to kind of dispel the myth that is this universe, right? Imagine ocean seen as a reflection in a mirror. There is no real wave in that mirror, right? So you could take a mirror and try to see the ocean in the mirror. You would see the waves in the real ocean, but then in the mirror, there are these waves, but there are no waves, and it's an image. Universe is like that, he says. It's just an appearance. I am that profoundly peaceful ocean. I am peace itself, formless, infinite. So as you can see, what they are saying is that if you attach yourself very closely to the world or the body or the mind, it is going to cause you a lot of suffering. And the goal is for you to kind of have this third person perspective, if you will. Okay, so I made a slight mistake in the article that I gave you guys. It was not a mistake. That was the one that I thought, that it was an English version, until I came upon another version of it, which I thought was way closer to the Sanskrit version. So what I recommend is I have like 6 different these pages. Maybe, if you want to raise your hand and one of you guys can read this, and then we all can analyze it. So who would like to start with this page?
I'll be glad to read.
Okay.
Seer and Seen. Number 1, the form is seen. The eye is seer. The mind is both seen and seer. The changing moods of mind are seen, but the witnessing self, the seer, is never seen. Can we go on?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, you can finish the page and then we can analyze.
Okay. Number 2, the eye, remaining one, beholds varying forms, such as blue and yellow, coarse and fine, short and long, and differences such as these. Number 3, the mind, remaining one, forms definite intentions, even while the character of the eye varies, as in blindness, dullness, or keen-sightedness. And this holds also of hearing and touch. Number 4, the conscious self, remaining one, shines on all the moods of mind, on desire, determination, doubt, faith, unfaith, firmness, and the lack of it, shame, insight, fear, and such as these. Number 5, this conscious self rises not, nor has it setting, nor does it come to wax or wane. Unhelped, it shines itself and illumines others also.
Correct. So obviously, I guess there's no big revelation here that is being made. So I sees things, and then there's mind. Actually, I'll just put top, this diagram here. So I is the senses that sees the things, but then there's mind that is tracking, how is my eye? My eye might be blurry, or my vision is blurry, the sound is high, sound is low. But then there's something that kind of watches our day-to-day moods, right? So there is the consciousness, as the article that was read just now, or the awareness. It is monitoring the mental states. So it is as if that consciousness is spreading through the whole system, and it is giving consciousness to rest of the objects all the way up to the final object, right? So Howard, you want to say something?
Yeah, are we actually able to get this online so we can refer?
Oh yeah, there is the link in the invite. If you go to the invitation, there's a link there, and you can.
Isn't that the Miller one though?
Huh?
This is not the Miller one though, is it? This is a different one.
Sorry, repeat that again.
The one we're using now.
Uh-huh.
That's not the one that was referred to in the invitation.
No, it has been. I updated the invite. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So there are the three important rules that we want to follow when we are talking about the seer and the seen. Seer and the seen are different, right? So whatever we are seeing, there are objects outside and our eyes are watching it. Our eye is different from the object. Seer is always one, right? Seer is one eye is watching multiple things. And the seer is relatively unchanging compared to what is being seen, right? So those are the three primary rules of the seer and seen differences. Seer never becomes the seen, right? Not in the sense of just like I am watching the screen, the Zoom meeting here. So I is not going to become part of that, what is being watched. Seen exists because of the seeing of the seer. Objects or the plurality that we see out there that keeps changing. And what Vedanta says is the fundamental thing is that anything that changes the state is basically not real. And one more thing is that we are but that one true Brahman, the knower, right? The orange thing, the awareness. Ron, you want to say something?
Yes. I actually think that the original translation that you sent is amazing. It may not follow the Sanskrit literally, but I think it really captures the spirit.
Yes.
And what I would say is in many of these ancient texts, the key point is always mentioned in the very beginning. They don't kind of build up to it. They hit it with you right away, and then they backtrack to explain it, how they got there and so forth. So I think I would really like to share, if you can put it on the screen, the translation for the very first one, because I think the language is excellent throughout that translation. Could you allow me to read it?
Actually, I don't think we will have time. So what we are going to do is we are going to stick with the text that we have, because a lot of the slides and the content, yes. So they're very similar, the both of them. So I like the first one that I present earlier, put in the thing. But then there are certain concepts that are there in the second one that highlight some key things which were missing from the other one. So we'll stick with one document. And, there is we will have a lot of time to kind of explore this on our own. But right now, because the time is limited, so I think we should move on. Okay. All right. So one other thing is that, mind might be peaceful or might not have enough peace, right? So it is not, there is a lack of peace. But a consciousness that is watching the mind's activity is kind of staying outside of it. So the idea is that none of this belongs to me, So, but what happens to us is that, we are holding on to a lot of these, we get kind of pulled into mind-focused activities. And it is kind of like the monkey trying to get the banana from a vessel with a very narrow opening. And he will never be able to pull out the banana because the banana itself is blocking his need for that banana. So all he has to do, and he's kind of stuck there and he's going to get caught. So the best way for it to get out of this mess is to let go, right? That is the idea here. So between the seen and seer, the seer holding on to the seen objects can be problematic. Now, given that, right, that we are this witness consciousness or the awareness, we don't feel like that, right? So we clearly feel that, we don't even know about this consciousness per se. We think our mind and body is me. And then we also notice there are all these other things, other people, and all of that stuff, right? So how does consciousness come to our body from witness consciousness? So that is covered in this next section. Who would like to volunteer to read this? Anybody?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. This illumining comes when the ray of consciousness enters the thinking mind, and the thinking mind itself is of twofold nature. The one part of it is the personal idea. The other part is mental action. Number 7, the ray of consciousness and the personal idea are blended together like the heat and the hot iron. Okay, number 8.
No, hot iron ball.
Yes, sorry, let me just get this a bit big here. Hot iron ball, as the personal idea identifies itself with the body, it brings that also a sense of consciousness. And then number 8 says the personal idea is blended with the ray of consciousness, the body, and the witnessing self respectively, through the action of innate necessity of works and of delusion. The next point is, since the two are bound up together, the innate blending of the personal idea with the ray of consciousness never ceases, but its blending with the body ceases when that works wear out, and with the witnessing self through illumination. When the personal idea melts away in deep sleep, the body also loses its sense of consciousness. The personal idea is only half expanded in dream, while in waking, it is complete. The power of mental action, when the ray of consciousness has entered into union with it, builds up mind images in the dream state and external objects in the waking state. The personal form, thus brought into being by the personal idea and mental action, is of itself quite lifeless. It appears in the 3 modes of consciousness. It is that BAM?
No, born. It is
born. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Man, my eyes are bad today. It is born, and so also dies. Thank
Right.
you for that privilege.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks. So, so I guess in the first section, it starts with the world, the eyes, the mind, the consciousness. But now it is trying to wonder, what is this I that we feel, right? So we'll open up for questions. Just before we go there, I just wanted to focus a little bit on this hot iron heat and this idea of how consciousness, we get consciousness, we are conscious beings. How does that happen? And what is this nature of I? Let's explain this with a little bit of a diagram here. Now, again, the way I look at this is a logical way. Logical. When I say logical, what I mean is there are certain things that we just will never be able to experiment or find out, right? And what the Indian philosophers have done here is they have tried to dissect this I that we feel, the consciousness that we feel, through the lenses of what is accessible to them, which is the dreams and real life and all of that stuff. The awareness is there everywhere, right? It is all around us. So what this hot iron ball that is mentioned here, right? The way to look at it is the awareness is shining on everything. So there are all kinds of things, objects on this planet. One of the things there is our mind. Our mind has this shining reflective quality, if you will. So I'm showing a mirror there where the sun is reflecting from the mirror, but the sun is not reflecting off of the tree per se, right? So there's no image being formed there, but the mirror has this quality to reflect. So there is this reflected awareness that comes about when awareness comes in front of our subtle body or our ego, if you will, right? So something happens there where the awareness, the way to look at it is awareness is the fire, and our subtle body is the vessel that is sitting on, like let's say a bowl of water, right? Or in this case, they have taken the example of iron ball. Iron ball is held with fire, and now after a certain amount of time, the ball is going to be hot, but the heat that it gathers is not its innate heat. It is borrowed heat. But awareness already has that innate heat, which is the innate consciousness. But the mind, the iron ball, gets all that heat, and then now it is transmitting all that heat out to all of our senses. So suddenly we feel conscious from our mind all the way up to the tip of our nail, right? So everywhere we feel the consciousness spreading through our body, and that is the I-ness that we feel. And we feel that we are conscious. So that is that consciousness. But that's how we feel. And then we'll talk about what happens, what is the mistake that happens. So anybody has some comments? I guess Jason was raising hand.
No, I'm not raising hand. I'm just testing I can raise hand or not. Thank you. Yeah, I'm host. I always have a problem to raise hand.
Okay, no problem. All right. Anybody wants to make any comment here about the iron ball or this analogy that is being brought out? Madeline?
Yeah. Yes, that actually was what I was going to ask about. The heat and the iron ball and the fire. Does that correspond to the system of, I can't think of it, the sort of different elements that exist in a personality?
No, not directly. So he's using an analogy. We get there eventually. He's just saying iron ball. Now I could have taken, he could have taken an example of a vessel of water. It is initially cold, but then you put it on the stove or the gas, and the heat, which is the innate heat of that flame underneath, now that gets transferred to that bowl of water. Now the bowl of water, when you remove it from the flame, is still going to retain that heat. That retainment of that heat is the retained awareness that we have in our mind, that we have borrowed from the awareness that is all around us. So that's what that is. All right, James.
Yeah, I don't see a kind of like an expression of the problem, which is like, I understand that's very Western of me. The idea that we have a mind and a lot of givens, the mind, intention, dullness and keen-sightedness. And we have a kind of like an inability to see the Brahman. So it's kind of, we're defining kind of like all these things in us that are Brahman-like, but we can't see the Brahman. And also, I don't see a real. I hear like a claim that we're going to get to a vision, but I don't see a problem in seeing what we need to see. So
yes, good. Yeah. So hold on to that thought. The idea.
I'm being way too Western here. I understand.
No. So I think the idea here is that, we feel disturbed, right? Our mind is disturbed. When a problem happens, we are like sad, happy. There is a notion of pain and suffering. There's pleasure and pain from on just the mere fact of us living and interacting with people. So so a lot of this thing that is happening, we take it upon ourselves because we think I am responsible or I am being attacked or whatever, right? So there are these things that are happening to us because we think that we own this this consciousness, if you will, and so we will get there. So James, hold on to that thought. The idea here is that how can we separate ourselves and as if look at everything clinically, like a doctor looks at a wound. If I'm wounded, I'm not a doctor. When I look at my wound, I'm in pain. And I am in, like, I just want to get rid of it, right? But when a doctor is looking at it, he's not experiencing the pain, but he is helping to fix that pain, right? So think of it that way. All right, so Dave.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just going to stress the connection with the senses into the mind to interpret what the sense sees. For example, in the mirror, there's light coming in, but then my mind will interpret that I have a reflection of the sun and I have a reflection of clouds. And in my personal case, I hear my neighbor mowing his grass. Well, actually, I'm hearing a frequency of sound, but because I've heard this before often, I interpret that it's a lawnmower. And the other thing about the seeing and seer, I'm looking at my eyes and seeing things, but I don't see my eye. Now, if I look in a mirror, I can see my eye, but typically it's just a one directional thing. Is that kind of what we're getting at with the see and seer?
You got it. You got it. So see, there is a story about, let me not get into that, but basically a headless man. We'll talk about that if there's time left then. So you're absolutely right. Our eyes cannot see the eyes. So we have to go to the mirror and watch it. Our face is another same thing, right? We can't see our face. We have to go to the mirror and look at the face. I can see your face, you can see my face, but I can't see my own face. So that is the seer and the seen distinction. So Phil.
Yes, if ultimately awareness is the most basic thing, I don't even know whether to call it a thing or whatever it is, but the basic structure, let's say. Why does it need us or any other being to manifest awareness when it could just manifest awareness on its own? Like, why do we imagine that we exist? I mean, does it really need us to be a mirror to reflect on the awareness? So is it codependent in that sense?
It's a play of God, is what Vedanta would say, but that is putting in terms of God. But there is another way to look at it. Again, they have given certain qualities to awareness. The same diagram I'm going to show one more time when I hopefully address your question, Phil, as to why this, why is there reflection? Why is there even us? Why does awareness need us? Hugh.
Yes, I think what I'm getting out of this is that awareness is there in any event. But what happens with us is that we are addicted to our own ego. So what happens is our ego literally gets in the way of full awareness, because we're trying, because, we grow up in a world, we're influenced by whatever social construct we are grown up in, and we are told how to think of ourselves. And so that ego gets in the way of awareness, and the ego causes us so much pain. It causes us fear, anxiety, all these other things, because we're trying to protect the ego, you know, whereas if we would just let go of our ego, we would come into full awareness.
Yes, and the thing is, I think we fundamentally understand this stuff. What this text does is it is going to show us some techniques. Initially, it starts out with these kind of diagrams and separation and all of that, right? It's a way of presenting an idea, a methodology, but then eventually it will get to that exact conclusion that you made. We sort of fundamentally understand that we are getting in the way of us being fully aware and enjoying life, right? Perfect. All right, so we got to move on here. So ultimately, you know, we sentient beings, what all do we contain, right? So as me as an I, what do I see? I see three things around me, right? As based on this diagram, I have this reflected consciousness. Because what is this reflected consciousness, RC, that I call here? It is just this conscious feeling that we get, right? You know, I'm conscious, I can feel my skin is itching, or I can see things and all of that stuff, right? So there is this conscious feeling that we have. We have body, right? You know, we have this body, I can poke myself and I can feel it. But then we also have this way of, hey, you know, I know I'm happy right now, or I know I'm talking. So there is this feeling that I can watch myself. That is that witness consciousness, right? And that is, we sort of know that, you know, every so often we kind of go between the ego and this reflected or the witness consciousness at different points of time, right? So we have these three elements that kind of define I. So what is the relationship that we have with these three things, right? So that is the question that this writer is asking. So one of the things that you know, he says is the body, the connection with body. It has to do with the work that we do. You know, we are born and then we die. Between the birth and death, there are a bunch of actions that we do, right? And that is that karma, or you know, the meaning or the translation of that is work. And it happens all the way up to death. At the point of death, our relationship with the body is ended. Our body and senses is ended. What is our relationship with the this mind or the ego, right? What is that relationship? That relationship is a very natural relationship. What that means is that if you look at a mirror and the reflection inside a mirror, that reflection and the mirror, they are always going to be there. That is the fundamental nature of the mirror, that there is going to be a reflection in there. So that connection is always going to be there. You cannot do anything about that. That will never be snapped, right? So that will always be there. So we will always feel the ego. We will always feel that cannot go away, right? That's what he says. And then there is this relationship with awareness, right? So the witness consciousness. That awareness that we feel, or the connection that we feel, it is born out of error. You know, so he says that there is no connection, because what happens is, once the mind gets the consciousness, the red hot ball, you know, it starts thinking that it is the generator of fire. It is the knower. It is the seer. Not that the awareness is seeing through mind and through eyes and all the objects. What happens is we think that my mind is conscious and it is going through my eyes and looking at the objects. We don't have any space left in our thought process that, hey, no, we are observers of whatever is going on in our mind, right? So we think that we are conscious and we are this conscious being, right? Now, there is a way to fix that error, and that is the knowledge, and that is the knowledge that we seek. The little I that we feel is this little boundary of the mind and the senses, which really all they are is borrowed consciousness, right? So they get consciousness just because they are part of this whole awareness that is spread in the universe, or it's always available. So I am not I, right? Capital I. This I is not the real I, but witness of I. And I will not be free. You know, when we talk about the enlightenment and all of that stuff, that little I is not going to be free. But I, this, what I should be, will actually become free from that little I, that ego, right? So that is the goal that we want to get to. So this is somewhat similar in how to remain as witness consciousness. We're going to see that, right? So enlightenment, basically, according to this author, how do I get free from myself? You know, that's the meaning of it. Realize ourselves as consciousness, right? My inner being is consciousness. Realize everything outside is also consciousness, which means the simplest way to look at this is there is a certain kind of oneness amongst all of us and the universe and everything. But one can ask this question, right? And that is what we are going to get to, is why does this consciousness seem to change, right? So we do feel like, hey, you know, sometimes we are conscious, we are not conscious. You know, when we die, we are not conscious. That's the popular feeling, right? Or when we sleep, consciousness kind of goes down. So what is this notion of body mind, right? You know, when we talk in the context of this new knowledge that consciousness is always there, except that, you know, we said that consciousness, because it is the seer, it is going to stay constant, yet we don't feel like that, you know, it keeps changing. So Howard, you want to ask something?
Yeah, the statement that conscious, everything is conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Does that imply that inanimate objects are conscious as well?
Yeah, so the oneness, consciousness, yeah, we will get there. Yeah, you're right. So it is not conscious in the sense that they can respond or think or anything like that, right? It is conscious in the sense that they exist. And we'll talk more about that. So hold to that thought, okay, Howard? It's going to get interesting. So consciousness is unchanging, right? So that is the primary principle of Seer and Seen. But we see it varying. But what is varying really is the mind, is what he is saying. You know, mind can get tired, awake, bored, shut down, right? When we go to deep sleep, so there's these three states, right? So there is the deep sleep, dream state, and the wakeful state. When we are in the deep sleep state, it is actually a reflected consciousness has gone down. It's as if the mirror has been put down. There is no more consciousness left. So we don't dream, we don't do anything. In fact, we are not aware of anything around us when we are in deep, deep sleep, right? We are not aware. Yet when we wake up, we kind of say, hey, I slept like a baby. I feel right, amazing. You know that. So what is that? Who knows that I slept like a baby? So that is the point. That's why they say that there is this consciousness, or the witness that is watching knows about your deep sleep. It knows about the fact that you were dreaming, and it also knows that, you know, in your wakeful state, right? So it is observing. Now there's one more concept that I just wanted to introduce to you. This might seem like a busy slide, but this might also seem a little kind of magical. When we think about religion always have certain interesting things in it, right? But go with this. There is a way to kind of look at this and reflect on how I can use this in my day-to-day life, right? So what does my day-to-day life look like, right? So I have wakeful state, right? I dream when I'm sleeping, and then I fall into deep sleep, right? So that is my wakeful state. But what is life? Life, basically, there is birth, there's a bunch of actions, that is our life, right? and then eventually we die, right? So you can think of this lifetime itself as a sort of a day. So you're born and death, that is one day, right? Effectively, that is your lifetime. And what Vedanta says is, or what Hinduism believes is, that our body consists of gross body, which is what we know, we can feel this, there is this, but guess what? Even our mind is considered as a gross body. But then there is also a subtle body. So subtle body is what gives us, all kinds of other attributes. And there is one more chart that kind of shows this breakdown. But what it says is that this subtle body plus the gross body basically brings about the lifetime, right? So one whole circle of life. So the subtle body gets into a physical body in the womb of the mother, and now the lifetime has started, and all these different things are happening, and there's memories, during the daytime and the nighttime. Basically, there's memories in the day that your mind is gathering those memories, and then it projects these dreams to us. And what is also happening to us during this whole period circle of life is there is a world of names and forms that is feeding our senses. So that is another thing that is happening. Jason, do you have a question?
Yeah, can you explain what's the subtle body? When you talk about gross body and the subtle body, is that Atma or?
No, well, Atma, Brahman, yeah, it's the consciousness. These are a variety of names for that. So subtle body is, there is a chart that is coming. So Jason, just hold on to your question. I'll talk about that. Oh, in fact, right here. So Hindus have a trichotomous view of body. So what does that mean? There are three bodies, basically. We have a subtle body, we have the physical body, and then there is the actual true body, or the true reality. What is subtle body? Subtle body basically has a combination of these things, right? One is the vitality that we feel. It carries the essence of this, the so-called prana. So in yoga, you might have heard, people breathing, doing the breathing exercise and all that stuff. They are basically invoking prana, right? So they're trying to bring vitality. Then we have the mind, this feeling of I-ness, then which comes with its the whole range of things like desires, sorrow leading to sorrow, right? Or happiness and things like that, right? So that is the mind. But then we also, what is included in the subtle body is the intellect. Or they call it as Vidyarnya. And this is the one that sort of, for example, here it says, it decides to gain knowledge. So, we might have a choice between pleasure, but then we say, hey, you know what, I got to pull back from this pleasure, but then maybe I want to go listen to this world philosophy group, right? Do something that, helps me kind of do something a little more above the level of just plain pleasure in a bar or something like that, right? So that is this Vidyarnya kosha, so subtle body basically is this combination of vitality, mind, and intellect, right? So that's what that is. And the idea is that lifetime to lifetime, so we tend to have multiple lives. After we die, there is certain impressions that we gather during this lifetime that kind of goes out into that subtle body. So now the subtle body has those impressions that it has gathered from past lifetimes, and it is going to enter into another body, another me, effectively. That is the second life for me to go and do something about those karmas that I have collected. And that will go on, right? So that's what this is this is saying after my death, what is death according to Vedanta is the subtle body exits this body. My body has withered and the subtle body goes away. Where does it go away? It is going to go back into another body because there were some karmas that you have to kind of reconcile with, if you will, right? So there are some mistakes that you might have done. There are some sins and there are things of that nature that you might have collected. And then you need to come back, and that will go on until you realize that, hey, this is not working out, man. This is just like this loop is going on forever. I need to stop this loop. And that is when the subtle body's life ends. So there is the physical body, and this is our day-to-day, dreaming and all of that stuff, right? And then there is the subtle body. So this subtle body almost has a lifetime of eons, that's what Hindus believe. And then at the time of enlightenment, like Buddha, right? His subtle body stopped. That's it. There's no more rebirth for him, because that is his choice. That is what he decided. And, one can come to that stage. That's that way. What this life here is full of suffering. And one wants to exit that cycle of suffering. Howard, do you have a question?
Yeah, 2 points. If you go back to the other frame, yeah, the definition of mind, how do you pronounce that? Man, is it, or man?
Man.
Man. So is that just a definition of mind in the context of subtle body, or is that a general definition of mind? Because to me, that is actually I would call that feelings rather than mind. So yeah, it says feeling of life. So desire, sorrow,
sorry, yeah, it's not quite definition there, but I just wanted to give you an understanding of what the subtle body is. Subtle body, subtle basically because we just don't know where this comes from. We don't know where vitality comes from. We don't know where our mind or these feelings come from. We don't know where our intelligence comes from, right? Of course, we study, learn, but there is a certain innate ability for us to kind of discern what is the right thing to do, not just pleasureful thing. We have noticed that, after a certain expertise, the wisdom, so-called, it comes to us. Where does it come to us, right? So,
my question was more a definitional one. So
yeah, no, I don't have the definition of mind here. Sorry.
Yeah, but if I were to use the word man in general, when I'm talking Hindu philosophy, does that mean that definition there of desire, sorrow, happiness, as in the feeling of small I? So.
Yes. The man is basically the Hindi translation of mind, and it is filled with desires, sorrowness, happiness, pleasure. It is, emotions, all of that. Yes.
Just to clarify, but is it restricted to when I'm talking about small I, or is it just a general?
Well, the small I is representation of this collection of desires and sorrow and stuff like that. So yes, it is meant for that I, because the larger I doesn't have that problem.
Yeah.
But then what has happened to our common public understanding is that larger I is that I is what we feel as I. The small I is what we think is the I.
Yeah. And
that's what we are trying to address.
Is small I more or less the same as ego?
Small I is what?
Ego. Is that the same thing as ego?
Ego, yeah. Ego is part of it. Yes.
Yeah.
It is something where, the small I is the common notion of I that we feel today, right? My body, my property, my pain, or my divorce, my marriage, my kids, all of that is small I. And we are discussing what is this larger I that we should be, infinite I, that, the consciousness that we should be feeling. Small I is the finite I. Finite because it is constrained in this body. And then we feel everybody else is the other. James, Dave, everybody on this meeting here, They're all others. We don't know them. And, and when we I and others, we suddenly have little less compassion to the other beings. That's the point.
Can I just make one other observation? So the analysis seems to be looking at individual versus entire universe, right? I'm just making this observation. You can disagree with it or not.
Yeah, and it is individual versus universe.
Yeah.
But universe is also the whole notion that there is an individual and universe. It is trying to collapse that together.
Yeah.
Everything just goes away. There is no
I just wanted to make the observation that we're making deductions from that. But the thing is, there's a whole lot of other stages in between. So any form of collective beyond the self, right, represents something beyond the self. And therefore, you can make some of the things that you're attributing to the universe might just be confined to the collective, whatever it happens to be. It might be two people, might be a city, might be a country.
Yeah, anything outside of me is universe. Anything outside of me is universe.
That's what I'm saying.
Howard, we'll get to hold on to your thoughts. There's going to be a lot that is coming. And guys, please make your very short observations. Phil, go ahead.
Yeah, to me, the subtle body sounds very much like Jung's collective unconscious, except for this difference. In other words, since there is rebirth in this model, then one is held responsible for one's action, where the collective unconscious, since there is no rebirth, you only are passing on your virtues and sins to your descendants, and they live with the sin of your father, because you get off scot-free for whatever you do. That seems like the difference between Jung and this concept, right? Which is you're held responsible.
You will, in Hinduism, you will pay for everything that you do.
Well, that's what I mean. What was with Jung is the collective unconscious. You're suffering for the sins of your father.
All right. So James.
Yeah, I do get mind and intellect as kind of like representing mental process. So, and the vitality, a little bit more body there, and you call it subtle body, so that's good. I'm not a dualist, so I can understand
vitality
that.
is not body. Vitality is not body. Body needs something. I will have eye. If I pull my eyeball out and keep it outside, it can't see anything. It needs a mind, it needs a brain, it needs every organ in our body to kind of function properly. But then it also needs one more element that scientists are still looking for, which is, what is it that makes us understand these images that are going through my eye? We interpret it, and then we make intelligent discussions about it, right? Or decisions about it. So that is that vitality. Vitality has nothing to do with body. Vitality is something outside the body.
So mind and intellect are body, but vitality is not.
No. There is physical body up here. You see that? Physical body is the body that you are talking about.
But why do you call it subtle body?
Subtle body is just things that are required for a person to be a human being. So that's what the subtleness, it is subtle because it is not tangible. So, all right.
But why do you call it subtle body if it is not body? In other words, my logic.
Yeah, no, it's a subtle body of things. It's a group of things, and then there's the group of things.
But I can't call it body if it's a group of things.
It doesn't matter. This author has chosen to call it body. So.
Yeah. Now, the other question is, are you going to talk about gross body? In other words, I haven't heard the definition of gross body yet. And are you going to define true reality?
Yes. So gross body is close to physical body. We are going to talk about that. Yes. So hold on to that. So let's move on here. Claudio.
Yes. Finally. Yeah, I just wanted to see if I got this right. The subtle body, although you described it as being finite and kind of like physical in a way, because you'd say as a subtle body, it goes through repetitive reincarnations. Therefore, I presume it's immaterial. It's just that it's it's the lower I, or the lower self, of the lowercase self, if you want to refer to the Bhagavad Gita, because I see strong parallels between this reading and the Bhagavad Gita, with the higher I and the higher self with the capital S, and the lowercase I with the lower self, the lower self. So it's going through the karmic loop. So it's going through infinite reincarnations until it achieves, until it awakens the higher self, which is the Brahman, which lies dormant in everyone. And that's only accomplished through yoga, I believe.
We will get there. We will get there. So that's why I want us to kind of like, Jason has told me that I got to finish on time, because I think you guys are not going to feel complete because I think maybe what we should do is we should let the thing flow. There's a lot of questions, and he kind of methodically goes through it. What happens with the verses is they're so terse that you can't really understand, like there's not time spent on single verse there. So we have to go through that, and it comes to a point where it says, hey, this is how you do it, right? So it's a nice story he builds methodically. So I think again today, like our Kathopanishad, this conversation is going to cut off if we spend a lot of time. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, sir. Analytical engineer here, and I want to talk numbers. Let's say I have 100 people in my village, and this year 5 of them die. And next year 5 women get pregnant and give birth to 5 people, or 5 babies. To me, the subtle body sounds like what we call soul in the West, but I know that's the expression in a lot of our religions, that my soul goes from my body to the next body. But say instead 6 women give birth to 6 babies. 5 would get souls or subtle bodies from 5 people that died, but the poor 6th baby doesn't get anything. Does he come up short? That's why I don't like this.
Okay. This is a personal journey, like individual me. My body is not going to go into somebody else who has died. No, that's not how Hinduism thinks about it. Again, let's not dwell too much on the rebirth part.
Thank you.
Because the way I look at, I'm also an engineer myself, okay, and I believe in only one life, born, death. That's it. So, but there is a larger philosophical understanding. At least I have that, which is rebirth is a daily rebirth, right? When I look at myself, when I was, let's say 10 years old, I have some vague memories about it. I don't know exactly what I was at 10 years old, right? Because now I'm 50, it's like, I don't know what I was back then. So there's literally as if I have lived these multiple lifetimes. And when I think about it, I'm like, sometimes, my God, what was that back then? And, even today, like there are certain things, you can't remember everything from, let's say, 2, 3, 4 days ago. Maybe you can remember good just from today, not from yesterday. That analytical, that's not how you want to think about it. Madeline, a quick point. Go ahead.
Yes, I was thinking about the subtle body. One way to look at it would be that it's analogous to the body. If we look at the body as, say, a network of systems, predispositions, for your bones to keep being the same way, for your skin to keep being the same way over the course of your lifetime, that the subtle body could be seen as something like a constellation of different types of properties that you have inside yourself. So it's like a type of soul, but more like a constellation or a set of predispositions that get carried through without the specific memories or circumstances.
Yes, you got exactly. I think predisposition is a good word. In fact, that is what the true Vedantins, that's what they believe, is that, as we whatever our tendencies are is what drives our actions. You know, we might be doing a lot of bad things, a lot of good things, whatever, right? That is that predisposition that kind of becomes part of our subtle body as it leaves our body when we die. And that kind of dictates what our next life is going to be. Now, forget about this whole multiple rebirth and all of that stuff. That is BS in my opinion. But my point is, even today, right? You know, what our childhood was, how did we live that childhood is going to impact our teenage years. Our teenage years is going to impact our adult life, right? So you want to think in terms of, at least I think about it in that terms. So moving on, guys, let's move on. Thank you. All right. So one more analogy here, just to kind of force this concept that the presenter, the writer is trying to do. Body is like a pot of water, you know, and the sun is the awareness, right? And this pot of water is reflecting the sun. You will see the images of sun in all these pots. Now, a pot will basically say, I am neither the pot, the body, nor the water. So as if the pot itself, the clay pot, is the body, the water is the mind. And remember, we talked about the reflection, right? So what is waking and sleeping? You know, there is the sunrise and sunset that is happening. But if you think about it, really, so we look at our waking and sleeping is being observed by consciousness, you know, so we become conscious during the day. So I'm conscious right now. I feel conscious right now. And then in the night, I'm going to sleep. I don't feel as conscious, right? So we think that consciousness comes and goes. It's kind of like we think sun rises and sun sets, but does it? You know, sun doesn't really move, right? Sun is stationary. And in the same way, consciousness is stationary. Life and death. What is life and death? You know, the gardener comes and he says, hey, this pot is wearing out. I'm going to take the contents of this pot and put it in this other pot. So now the subtle body has moved into another body, right? Effectively. What is spirituality? So you have this life, death, and these multiple things going on. What did we say? We said that somebody like Buddha will get tired of this circles of life, you know, the different lives. So it says, okay, I'm done with it. I'm going to get enlightenment, and that's it. What is this enlightenment? It is as if the little son has realized that there's more to this water and this pot. This shining that I see, like there's light, I can see that thing is glowing. I feel like it is glowing because of me. Or if I was to take it in the context of human being, I feel like because of my eyes, I can see this wall or this computer. Here, spirituality means now you are suddenly thinking about like, oh, wait a second, this light that I'm emanating, I'm not the source of this light. This light is coming from somewhere else. And then I'm looking for what is that somewhere else, right? So ultimately, I think really the goal of this kind of thinking is forget about this subtle body and the enlightenment or any of that. To me, right, it has definitely helped me. What it does is it kind of brings about a certain way of looking at everybody, looking at the whole world or the whole planet or the issues that you're facing. There's a way for you to not get disturbed yet address the issue. That's how I look at it, as to how I'm getting the benefit out of this. So what do we see in reality? Like, despite all of this talking, we still identify with the body, right? We still think that this is me. We are saying that we need to identify with the witness. So where does body, mind, and this world, right? So body, mind, and the world, the external and the internal come from. That's what is going to be taught here. So anybody wants to read this? Yeah, go for it, James. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. For the Maya has two powers, extension and limitation, or enveloping. The power of extension brings into the manifestation. Yeah, the power of extension brings into manifestation the whole world, from the personal form to the universal cosmos. 14. This manifesting is an attributing of name and form to the reality, which is being, consciousness, bliss, the eternal. It is like a foam on the water. 15. The inner division between the seer and the seen, and the outer division between the eternal and the world, are concealed by the other power, limitation. And this also is the cause of the cycle of birth and death. 16. The light of the witnessing self is united with the personal form. From this entering in of the ray of consciousness arises the habitual life, the ordinary self. 17. The isolating existence of the ordinary self is attributed to the witnessing self and appears to belong to it. But when the power of limitation is destroyed and the difference appears, the sense of isolation in the self vanishes away. 18. It is the same power which conceals the difference between the eternal and the visible world. And by its power, the eternal appears subject to change. 19. But when this power of limitation is destroyed, the difference between the eternal and the visible world becomes clear. Change belongs to the visible world, and by no means to the eternal. 20. The 5 elements of existence are these: being, shining, enjoying, form, and name. The 3 first belong to the nature of the eternal. The last 2 to the nature of the visible world. 21. In the elements, ether, air, fire, water, earth, in creatures, gods, animals, and men, being, consciousness, bliss are undivided. The division is only of name and form.
All right, thanks. So now the question is, why do we feel this limited me, limited I? And the answer is Maya. Where does Maya come from? Maya happens to be an eternal property, it is a property, inherent property, of Brahman, or the awareness. And it is the nature of God, I guess, in this case, or awareness, where it is the dimension that kind of creates space, time, and also causation that we feel, right? This caused that and all of that stuff. So this notion of causation is also created by this eternal being. And this whole thing that it tries to create is Maya. And it is considered as play of God, at least in Hindu mythology. So there are 2 primary properties of this. Again, all of this is a way to get to this oneness that we have been talking about, right? So a lot of these you can believe or not believe, but it is building as if it is trying to solve a puzzle, and it is getting to the stage where you will feel one with everything, right? So what does Maya do? This inherent nature of Brahman, which is Maya, is it has this notion of projection. What it does is it says consciousness and it is projecting it onto everything out there, be it a human being or an object or whatever, right? And then we noticed how the subtle body takes it, the mind takes it, the red hot ball, and then we feel as a sentient being. Now, this projection that you see, the blue projection that goes out, right? So there are two things that are happening with that projection. One is the projection itself, which means I feel sentient. But then it also has another property, which is veiling. So it is an inherent quality of consciousness to feel like this is me, that's it. Mind mistakes itself as the knower. It doesn't, it cannot separate itself. That seer and seen separation that we talked about between, at that final level, between the awareness and mind, it's dropped. So mind says, I am it. I am the knower. That I, that little I, causes me and the others. The others are suddenly born. And there is a world, universe is born at that point, right? So what that also does is it starts a circle of life, if you will, the wheel of life, so to say. Because I feel I'm limited in this body and I can see these other beings, what happens is I suddenly start feeling like, oh man, this guy has that and I don't have that. And I have not visited Paris, or I'm lacking that thing, or there's all these different limitedness that we start feeling, which starts giving rise to desire. Then we start earning more money, want to fulfill those desires, right? And as we are doing that, we might be hurting people. This is where we start building the karmas, and which then leads to many lifetimes. And then after a certain amount of lifetimes, you kind of like come to this awareness automatically that, hey, wait a second, I need enlightenment. So I think this is, I'm getting tired of this thing. You can see that this whole thing, it can happen even today, right? You can see that something that I have had is going to go away, or the pain that I felt, eventually it goes away, right? So there is this ephemeral quality to things in life. So the idea is how to get rid of the veiling and get to the point where there is no more karma and exit to this cycle of rebirth. So the projection and veiling, let me talk a little more about it, and then I'm going to open up the questions. Brahman, or the awareness, is everywhere. What is awareness made up of? Three things: existence, sat, consciousness, chit, and bliss, anand. Bliss is, don't confuse that with the happiness. Bliss is just a sort of like a peaceful state of mind. So what happens when this Brahman shines on things, or the projection, right? It basically gives a notion of existence to gross matter. Gross matter can be lots of things. It can be sofa, it can be a stone or a tree, or it could be this body. It is gross to begin with, right? Gross meaning it doesn't have sentience or consciousness. But it exists, right? It is there. It is. And then there is the subtle matter so the whole matter space is divided into this gross matter and subtle matter. And subtle matter has this innate quality of that mirror that we talked about earlier, where the consciousness reflects, right? So there is this reflected consciousness. So there's the borrowed consciousness that goes into it. And then it develops this notion of it's me, right? And that is called as the Chidabhas. Chidabhas is a conjugation of, or bringing together of Chit and Abhas. Abhas is just an appearance, right? So projection does that, right? Projection creates all of this. Nothing wrong with that. But then the mind's reflected consciousness, or the subtle body's reflected consciousness, says, this is me, I am it, right? And that is that is where all the problem starts, is what the author is trying to say. Or in the analogy of our pot there, it says, my water is generating this light. It doesn't know, it doesn't think that the other waters also have the reflection of the sun, or it doesn't think that the sun is the reason why it has that reflective capability, or the light that is coming out of it. So mind shines the body, and this is called as the jiva, right? So this tiny limited body that we are in Sanskrit, it is called as the jiva, and it starts thinking it is the knower. So the original name of this book that we are reading is Driga Drishya. Driga is the knower, and Drishya is what is known. And then the final knower, the ultimate knower, is the drishta. The real knower is the witness. So the rest of the world, so there is the mind internally, and the rest of the world is known, right? So that is the distinction that we make. And, you know, in the truest sense, if you think about it, right, I can know only about my sentience. I know that you can talk and all of that stuff, but I cannot know exactly what you're thinking, or the feelings that you have, or anything like that, right? In the truest sense, I only know me as a conscious being, the aware being. So the rest of the world that I think is not me might as well be just a gross matter, right? Or something other than me. So there is this obscuration that happens. Obscuration is this, basically the awareness and the mind who thinks that it is aware. Now they kind of become sort of one, right? So the awareness basically is thrown out of the picture, and mind takes control over things, and the problem starts, right? So, you know, in the analogy of the ocean, right? See, the ocean is just the body of water, but the body of water has waves. And then he also gives the example of foam, right, in his discussion. So these waves, they also form these little bubbles, or the foam. So we think we are this little wave, you know, we have this existence. There is these other waves that are not me. So this Swami who talks about this, you know, he has this funny quote. He says, little wave has things to do. There are other bigger waves to compete with, and other little waves to be scornful of. Some waves to be friendly with, many waves to fight with. Ultimately, what is our ending? Is we go back to the ocean, right? So we do all this drama, and then we end up back in the ocean. Now, the point is, can we overcome this veiling? You know, it's good for us to get this projection of consciousness. We can enjoy the world, but then because of this me feeling, we cause a lot of suffering for ourselves. So there are these two aspects to it. One is inside within us that prevents us from knowing that we are conscious. We are that consciousness, right? So there are two elements to us, the mind and the consciousness. I, the larger I, is what we have forgotten inside us. And outside, you know, if you think about it, outside is also the projection of Brahman. But we forget that, right? So because Brahman is, or awareness or consciousness is not in our thought process, we think that this is it. And we forget to give that same equanimity, if you will, to these other objects that we are scornful of, or we are really happy to see, or, you know, any of those things, right? Now, can we recognize Brahman within ourselves and within outside, you know, in just this combination of experiences? And how do we get there, right? How to do this separation of inside our subtle feelings that we have. There is this split that we want to do between mind and consciousness, and outside that we think there is a world out there. We want to basically see the world as a Brahman. So that is called as the discernment. So again, the book is called as Drig, Seer, Drishya, Seen, Vivek. So it is a sort of a recipe for you to kind of bring about that wisdom or the discernment. So there is an experiencer, there is the experienced, if you will, right? So the knower, known, seer, seen. But let's just focus on this notion of experience. All is happening in the Brahman, or the awareness, or the consciousness. If there was no consciousness, if we were not feeling conscious, I wouldn't be enjoying reading this, for example, or I wouldn't be enjoying talking to you guys, right? So there is this notion of consciousness that gives about a sort of like a base ground for all the experiences. Every experience is in our consciousness, like my consciousness. So we all are carrying our own universes, you know, like my universe, some of it might overlap, but our understanding of the object that we are looking at is going to be totally different. And that is what it's meant by, like, I'm carrying my own universe, right? Experience of gross object, even the abstract concepts, right? So there is the material things, and then there's the abstract things about, you know, be it like relativity, theory of relativity, or, you know, some long distance planet out there that we don't know about in the universe and things like that, right? There are these 5 characteristics that we read earlier. What are these characteristics? Whenever this object comes into our consciousness, what that means is we see it, or we hear about it, or we read about it, or something, we come in contact, my consciousness comes in contact with it. What happens? We suddenly, it exists for us. That notion, that idea, or that object exists for us. It is as if we have lent existence to that idea. And then there is this cognizability, which is I being conscious about things, I can recognize this object, and it is sort of, it is coming alive for me. It's not coming alive in the sense that it is going to talk to me or anything like that. It exists, right? So there is this cognizability about that thing. And then there is this attractiveness. Now, attractiveness also comes with repulsiveness, right? But that is captured in that one word there. So what does experience need? Experience needs 3 things. The object should exist, right? Is, this book is, or this Zoom is, right? And there needs to be an ability of this shining ability. What does that mean? We shine our consciousness onto these objects. So effectively, we are giving it a sentience, if you will. Even though we are sentient beings, we are sort of giving it the shine. And then there is the bliss. What is this bliss? There is this notion of happiness that you feel. Now, you don't always feel happiness when you look at certain objects, right? We sometimes feel sad when we look at certain things or certain people, and then we feel super happy when we see some other people. But the idea of an experience where we are supposed to feel, not supposed to, we will feel bliss is something that you want to achieve. You know, you're not always going to get happiness or sadness, right? So you want to feel this sort of like a certain kind of bliss with it. You're not going to be affected by what you're seeing. And then there is also 2 other things that he says we can notice about objects. There's always a shape or a form to it, and then there's a name, right? So one of the ways that he says where you can build this ability of oneness is you want to focus on the first 3 aspects of anything that you observe. The fact that it exists, you know, respect its existence. The fact that, you know, you are able to shine and it is able to give you that joy or whatever. And even if it is making you sad or upset, you need to control your emotions. And those are the 3 things that you really, in every experience, every object, you want to focus higher. Do not focus more on the form or name. Because, you know, most of the time what happens is we look at something and we immediately develop a certain, either I hate it or I love it type of a quality. So defocus form and name, and ultimately, you know, you want to get to this Sat, Chit, Anand. That's a common phrase that they use in Sanskrit, of anything, of any object and within us. So that's that. Okay, questions? James.
Well, I guess I'm kind of conceptually, I guess I'm a little bit more. I don't have as many questions.
Okay.
I'm beginning to. I'm just. Is
You're
equanimity?
enlightened. The quality of enlightened person is you don't have questions and you're not confused.
That's true. I'm not too confused about the form. I thought at first that shine might be a negative thing, but you see it as a positive thing, so I understand that. You think that we illuminate objects rather than them showing themselves to us. So
Yes.
The Brahman and everything is a kind of like a that's your idea of true reality, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then I guess the other question is equanimity kind of like indifference, or is that sort of getting along in society?
Yeah, not at all. It is definitely not indifference. You are going to feel empathetic towards other human beings, and anything that is happening, you're going to help out people. All of that stuff is happening, but you're not going to sit in a living room and stressed out about what might be happening out there that you have no control over. So the idea, one of the things in Vedanta is help as much as you can, but don't be fretting about things that you have no control over. Like if you can solve Ukraine problem, solve it, go for it, go protest, all of that stuff. Don't sit in your living room and watch TV and let the war affect your mind. Your mind, your sanity is way, way more important than anything on this planet. Do not let anything impress you. But if you're out there, you see something, don't be indifferent. Participate, go do things, but just don't get too personally invested into things. Phil.
Well, I guess I remain still unenlightened. So I'll sort of ask my first question that I asked, but I'll come in it this way. As seen from the little I, it seems like a positive sort of like a place to express our existence in a way. Okay, so I accept that. But I do have a problem with what I would call the ontological framework of awareness, and which I asked before, and now the way you explained it, it sounds like, yes, my little I is codependent to the big I, and the other way around.
Yeah,
and the problem is that Maya is sort of playing a game to me, and Maya is not, how should I say, something that is good, but it's a part of Brahma. Okay.
Yes.
So Brahma is playing a game with me, and that doesn't seem very satisfying. Like I said, if Brahma was aware, then he doesn't need to be codependent on me or make me codependent on it or him or whatever. So therefore, in a sense, why is he torturing me except that I would have the, how should I say, the freedom to, in a sense, come back to his full consciousness? I mean, while
it is.
Why am I tortured along the path? I mean,
yes.
Is that
you are being tortured because you think you are you. If you think you are Brahman, it's not a torture. And that is what this is getting to, is if you can feel that infinite self and kind of laugh about it, boy, Brahman is nuts. what the heck is he doing in Ukraine? This is insane, right? And it is God playing hide and seek is what Hinduism believes.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
There is so much about this. So I would say you got to do more research and read. I'm telling you, these guys have had so much time at their hands back then in thousands of centuries or hundreds of centuries before. I don't know when this was written. I don't remember right now. But
I do feel a little bit like a plaything. Let me put it that way.
And that you feel that sentence that you just said, I.
Yeah. The little I. Yeah.
You're thinking from the context of this body, my body is hurting, Brahman, what the heck are you doing to me?
Yes.
Why are you doing this to me? So you are separating, and that is what we want to change, is what Vedanta says.
Yeah, but his being, which has included Maya, makes me separate myself. I mean, it's
Yes.
like
so the Maya,
I mean,
Maya, yes, that is a bigger topic. That is a bigger topic, and Maya itself has a value. If Maya did not exist, we wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
So Maya, what happens is Maya makes us conscious, but guess what? It gives us consciousness. Now that consciousness has a property of I-ness. That is the veiling. So Maya, we say Maya has given this, but Maya itself is sort of like the venom of cobra. Venom of cobra doesn't impact cobra, but it will impact the other people. So how can you observe that and kind of watch it for what it is? And we're gonna address that, Phil, hopefully by end of this talk, but it is 5:40 and I think I'm going to be shut down here pretty soon. Madeline.
Okay, so I think I have this straight, but I'm not sure that I like the entire system. So let's say that the what's going on with Maya, or the veil, is something like you're continually watching a series of films, and you identify with all of them. So it'll be like, first it's a heartwarming family thing, it's a Hallmark movie. Then it's a rom-com, then it's a horror film and another horror film and another horror film, and then it's a rom-com again. So you want to get away from that. You want to lift that veil. So let's say that I personally managed to do that. I identify only with the Brahman aspect of myself, with the capital I self. And so that then I am not, my subtle body is not reborn as a set of propensities as a small I anymore. Nonetheless, I don't know where that energy goes. Presumably it gets recycled into some other small I being. So whether it is an amoeba or a salamander, or does the whole thing, does everyone sort of keep going and everyone eventually gets liberated? And then it's Brahma again, but then Brahma gets bored and says,
then he does it all over again.
And the whole thing starts again?
You absolutely got it, Madeline.
But then it's a whole parade of rom-coms and horror films.
It's a horror film and rom-com, and it is the notion of when you go watch a movie, you watch a movie, but then every so often you realize that, hey, you get so engrossed in the movie and you get so afraid and you're so sad for the character and all of that stuff. That's fun. But then you kind of like, oh, wait a second, that's a movie, right? So you can take this third person perspective of it. And that is what Vedanta is saying, you should be doing that in real life. So the best actors get Oscars and things like that, right? Because they can fool us so well. You want to do the same thing in real life, and you want to participate in this life enough with full vivacity and a life and everything. But no, I think you got it. It's this whole thing will go on. There is going to be extinction. There is going to be people getting destructed. It is all Brahman's play. And I know, as horrible as that sounds, You know,
It does. It actually does sound really horrible.
It is. It is. And the thing is that there's nothing preventing you to do something about it. All it is saying is that you want to fight it, right? You know, I don't know if anybody has covered Bhagavad Gita here. You know, the actual, you know, this whole exact dialogue is happening between Arjuna and Krishna. Arjuna is saying, and here the war is between two brothers. He's saying, why should I kill my own family? While Krishna, the God, who should have said, don't destroy things, he says, no, 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 you have to fight. It is a very powerful dialogue. And that is really at the core of Hinduism. And it gets to the value of life and the value of destruction as well. That's all I'm going to say about it. Hugh.
Yes, you see, the Hinduism, it is very interesting. I find it very interesting because I'm from the Caribbean and we have Rastafarianism. And Rastafarianism is a combination of Afrocentricity and Hinduism. Because Rastafarianism say I and I, meaning that I is connected to the ultimate I. So I and I, and if I look at you, I say the I. So I can say, what's up? The I is the I saying something. That means you are the I and I am the I, but we're all I and I.
That's very similar though to what
yes, because even our use of even Rastafarianism, when they use the marijuana, it came from East India. It was introduced to the Caribbean from East India.
I believe.
And the Rastafarianism has Hinduism parts to it. So I find it very, very interesting because I find that I am the small I of the ultimate I. And when we realize that, then we reach that Brahman, right?
Yep, absolutely. And you know, a lot of these religions, you know, Vedanta is not a religion.
Yeah.
Hinduism is a religion. So there are certain things that you have to follow, and there is sin, and then there is heaven and hell and all of that stuff.
Right.
Vedanta goes deeper, right? It takes all these ideas and it builds this philosophy, and it steps away from these very superficial notions of what has been told to us to believe, and heaven and God and 33 million gods and this and that and all of that stuff. And it wants us to step back and really understand how to lead our life better. There is no God coming to save you.
That's right.
So that is and how can you take the ownership, and how can you feel empowered, and how can you not feel the sorrowness in this life?
Yes, because what happens is when you try to narrow it down to a God coming back for you, that's where the hindrance come in, because now you become competitive with your other eyes to say, well, God will accept me because I am more righteous than the other eye. So you see, that's the problem.
And God is not going to be like that, right? So
that's
God loves us equally.
That's right. Everybody.
Unfortunately, let me add that.
So it is. But I must thank you, because it is quite enlightening, and I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay. All right, Karen, go ahead.
I really like the analogy of the reflection of the sun in the water cups, because it seems to solve the problem of the increasing population, or what about if there's less babies in the next generation, right? Because you know, you're not worried about putting out another water cup because there's not going to be enough sun reflections to go around, right? If everything's coming from one thing and it's a emanation from it, then you know, you can just there's no problem with the numbers, right? Because it's all coming from one.
I don't think I would read it like that, but yeah.
well, I guess, right? Because, you know, I mean, how many subtle bodies can the one produce of Atman?
No, I think
is that the idea?
No, that's not the idea. I think, I mean, that's how I interpret it. I look at our population problem as a physical body problem, has nothing to do with subtle body. Physical body, you know, we have figured out ways to kind of cure ourselves from diseases and things like that. We have longer lifespans, and we have much more healthier lifestyle, much more healthier food that we eat, and, you know, less death and all of that stuff, right? So there is, what we have done is there is a span of life that we have just increased, and now we can have more physical beings. But the subtle body and all of this, again, I think from all of this presentation, all of this thing that I've read here, I think that is a major distraction. Really, it is about looking for yourself, and this notion that your subtle body is going to start at some point. Nature provides you that, and you're going to go through multiple lifetimes until enlightenment. That is your personal journey. This is not any commentary about population or other people. So this is a reflection into me. What is my lifetime, my one lifetime that I am right now aware of? And it is giving us tools that, hey, listen, in this lifetime, try to do good deeds. Try to pray to God, right? Or whatever, some really that first level of things. What that is going to do is it is going to set you up for better lives to come for in future. And then there is this next level of philosophy that it is introducing, again, from I perspective, me perspective. Now, when we address me, you know, we are peaceful to other people. If more of us try to focus on me, we probably will be a much more peaceful society with each other. Then the way we try to, like, you know, this larger thing of I that it is trying to have us go to, this infinity I, is something that is going to help us be a little more compassionate with our other beings and stuff like that. So it is this whole thing about soul, body, subtle body, and the physical body and all of that stuff is really my journey. It's a commentary on just me. That's it. There is no map here about population. Jason.
Yeah, Shashi, are you halfway down on the total? Have a 46 verse, right?
Oh yeah, I am at 21. So I have a few more, but I don't have to finish. Last time also I couldn't finish.
Yeah, I think you are 50% down almost, right?
I think I am, yeah.
Okay, so how about let's make it the second section, you know, when you get time, and you probably repackage it to the person who didn't join today, and then they also can continue, okay, on the second section. I think that would be
so I can just briefly, if I can take just like 2 minutes, what is...
Oh, sorry, I'm not rushing you to finish it. Okay.
No. So what is coming up now is basically, it has given us the solution here, right here. So the right here, it is talking about everything has 5 characteristics. There is understand the existence, the cognizability, and the attractiveness, means that your attention has gone to it, be it because it repelled you or because it attracted you. There's something that got your attention. So those are the things that you want to focus on. Do not focus on people's, obviously, you know, we have this problem, color, form, name, right? So that is something that gets us into trouble. Now, what it gets into the next few sections here, not few, actually 2 more left, is meditation. So Vedantic meditation is very different than your yoga or even the Buddha meditation, the Buddhist meditation, very different. So here, these meditation practices that they talk about, if you just take these 5 things that it has identified, it wants us to think about it just with closed eyes, inner, my thoughts, and my thoughts have these 5 qualities. I open my eyes, the objects that I see has these 5 qualities. So it is a constant meditation. That meditative lifestyle is what you want to lead, which is going to get you to this space where you're going to be in this bliss, the Sat Chit Anand, and you're not going to feel this constant, rat race and the suffering and all of that stuff from the so-called world, which actually is Brahman, but we think it's the world, the outside world. So that is what is going to be covered in the next set of things. And then there is a really interesting part that comes later on, which is it splits us into 3 selves. And those 3 selves, it is wanting to kind of give us some description about it. So obviously you can read about it and you should be able to get it. But I think the meditative practices were really, really good. I thought that maybe you could use it if some people are inclined to. Anyways, so that's what we have.
So sorry. Okay. So you plan to, we have about 10 minutes.
I can continue. Let me continue.
Yeah. Okay. So you find the way to stop and have a 5 minutes, have a question. And
Sure.
You probably repackage and for the second half, but make sure you quick review on the first part, so the person who didn't join today's section still have a way to continue. That was my suggestion.
So the meditation, remember, so far what we have done is, remember the first slide talked about 3 things, right? Shravana, Manana. Shravana means listening and reading, and just the verbal, physical part of the understanding piece. Then internalizing it. And the third is, how can I use this in my real life? So this is this Vedantic Samadhi is what they call it. So the idea is, at the end of the day, you want to develop a distance between self, the awareness, and my mind. And then that is the internal cleanliness, right? Cleansing. And then the external cleansing is basically you want to see Brahman everywhere, always, in every moment. So then there are these concepts where, you sit, you think of a thought, or you don't have to think, it is automatically going to come to you. Once the thought comes, you immediately want to take a third-party perspective. You're saying that, hey, look, I am thinking this thought. I am shining on this thought. And these thoughts are not me. They're going to come and go, So why do you do this? This is as if, you can't see your face, but like you can't see the awareness, right? You can't detect the awareness, but you can detect the awareness whenever these thoughts come or these objects come to your senses. You step back and say, hey, look, I am thinking this thought. So suddenly now you have connected with the awareness, right? So you want to do that exercise. Then you want to not use the thoughts. Now what you're saying is, I'm actually this unattached being, Sat Chit Anand, right? So there's existence, constant bliss, self-luminous, non-dual person. So initially you'll have to use those words, and then you want to say it as if you mean it, and you want to implement that in your own life to some extent. So that'll take some time, right? So now you're getting closer to Chit, or the pure consciousness. And as you're going through this exercise, this will become a habit. And then you will automatically, what will happen is, you will feel this anger, fear that you feel for outside world is just immediately going to kind of die down. And the same internal exercise you want to do outside is where you want to see the existence for existence itself. And then you want to realize that that existence is coming from that same existence that gave me the existence. So now suddenly you feel that oneness, and the focus on the name and form kind of drops away. You still use name and form, but it kind of goes away. Yeah, Madeline.
Just wondering, is it acceptable to apply this selectively? Like, could I do this during the horror movie parts, but not during the Hallmark film parts?
I would say, well, what Vedanta says here is that you want to do this for everything. The fact that you want to do it only during horror movie is you're trying to do this from a point of view of fear or anger. So you want to only get rid of negative things in your life. In fact, what Vedanta says is, you want to not be impacted by not just the negative things in your life, but also the so-called pleasurable things. You want to transcend yourself, right? So you want to look at the fact that, hey, look, I like this, what is the thing you said? Hallmark movie. I like it. Okay, you just say, oh, look, this is me liking this, Hallmark style entertainment. So you want to step back and watch that awareness that is aware of this pleasure. So you want to use this meditative practice in every aspect. So what we tend to do is we tend to gravitate more and more towards things that make us comfortable. What Vedanta is trying to do is it is trying to have us kind of be in this equanimity state with everything, so that it doesn't impact you. Because, you know, this pleasure thing that you feel for Hallmark movies is going to die away. Pleasure always, there's a following cycle, which is the sorrow that is going to follow. So yes, you want to use this all the time. Robert.
Yeah, what I take from this Hinduism is how we evolve as persons in a single lifetime, or can, by gaining a sense of maturity and understanding what life is all about, so that we're not caught up or sort of attached to things and find ourselves lost in our emotions or in our prejudices. And it gives us a greater sense of equanimity, compassion, and inner strength. You don't have to keep being reborn from one lifetime to the next. We can use this in a single lifetime.
Yes,
as
absolutely.
a way to guide us in how to evolve as persons.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you can use this because we are dying every day. So there is one of the Upanishads basically kind of covers that. Yeah, no, absolutely. The rebirth part is quite interesting. A lot of people get pulled into that discussion. A lot of people get into this dream, you know, aspect of this discussion as well. I notice is that, oh, you know, what does this dream tell me about me or this other? That's not the point. The point is, just like the dream is false to you, you wake up and you say, oh boy, I was dreaming. You got to think about this real life that you're living as false. We haven't gotten there, but that's what it is trying to want us to do, is that this life that we think is the reality is not the reality, just like dream was not the reality. Yeah. All right, 5:58. I'm doing well, Jason. I'm following the guidelines here.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry, I probably give you too hard a warning on that. Yeah, actually, I'm not that tough. So, but I learned. Thank you, everyone. And then you probably want to stop sharing the screen now.
Yeah,
and
I can.
Yeah. And then I think thank you, Sasha and Shashi, and then let me know, you know, what's your schedule, and then I can put you on the calendar, and then we can continue this one. And then I think it's because another thing, we have a lot of questions. I think the reason, that's my experience, because you don't, Shashi, you didn't come that often like me. So because I know the different philosophy take a long time to get in, right? Take a long time to get in. So I also learned when I just started the Chinese philosophy or Buddhism, being interrupted so many times, so many questions. But after a while, you know, people start to settle down. So it takes a while. So and I think Shashi is same as me. We are not really convinced by our own culture, actually, but we didn't deny it, and we try to very objectively introduce what we have when we were grown up, and then it's free of judgment. You know, you say, I don't like samsara. this reborn idea, I don't like this, that's fine. But that's the fact. 1,000 billion of people believe, and we can talk about. I believe, Shashi, you agree with me, right?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. So I am. There is a certain trajectory to our life. You know, when I was in India, I absolutely questioned just like this. You know, like why are women putting that dot on their head? Or you know, why do moms have to always be in the kitchen? You know, like why is that? You know, it's like things. Just like there was all these things. Why in temple? There are certain temples in India where women are not allowed, and you know, like then there are these category of people that are not allowed. So there's all of this stuff, right? And it kind of made me an atheist for the longest time, you know. So and then lately I have gotten back to really understanding what is the footing of all of these beliefs. So there are all these beliefs that kind of stuck everywhere. And it is a mass kind of like an agreement, if you will, because there is the priest class that is controlling the population. But what Adi Shankaracharya, the guy who started Vedanta, he also thinks that even yoga is abused. Even yoga, the way it is being taught to people, it is not really getting you to get to the essence of really the peace that we are looking for. And there is another little book that you know, we could cover at some point, where he literally takes every aspect of yoga and he puts it in a different light. Same exercise, but different light. Like when you do it like this is the benefit. And you suddenly like, you understand, oh boy, you know, that's really what this particular exercise was getting to. Today, it is being morphed into so many things, you know, in the Western world, yoga. So,
yeah, thank you, everyone.
And, yeah,
thank you, everyone. And next week we talk about the Chinese legalism, and then I think that's the second time we talk about this. And I think based on the Feng Youlan's writing, it's more how do we say it, the different point of view, and that would be interesting. So join us next week, and we expect Shashi to continue to finish this section, and let me know, you know, what time, and so we can schedule. Thank you.
Great.
Nice weekend.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Shashi. Thank you, Jason.
Bye.
Thank you, Shashi.
All right, see you next week.